The steady release of DLC content in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is finally about to come to an end. With only one DLC fighter remaining, it's more than likely that we'll be learning who this final character is in the inevitable September Nintendo Direct that we have every year. Or perhaps a mystery character reveal in a Sakurai Presents, like when Byleth was announced. This star-studded roster is bursting at the seams with iconic characters from both Nintendo and all over the video game industry. Back in June, just before E3, I pitched the idea for the 4 Champions of Hyrule to be one of the final DLC characters. But what if the final DLC character isn't a first party after all, but another third party? One company in particular already has a large presence in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but notably hasn't had any DLC yet: Capcom. Entering the battlefield with Mega Man in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, then Ryu from Street Fighter as a DLC character for that game, Capcom notably hasn't received a new fighter in Ultimate. Well, there's Ken, but he's classified as Ryu's Echo Fighter. With several Capcom-themed Spirit events, and even the iconic Rathalos from Monster Hunter as a boss in the game, it's surprising that we've yet to see a new fighter added to the roster in the form of DLC. Many have tossed ideas around through the years for the Hunter from Monster Hunter, or someone from Resident Evil to receive the final invite. But what if it was another particularly iconic Capcom series that notably hasn't even had a Spirit event yet?
Hold it!
That's right. Just in time for the 20th anniversary of the series in October, the defense is ready to present its argument for Phoenix Wright, the Ace Attorney himself, to join the battle as the final DLC character of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You may find yourself wondering how this humorous lawyer could find his way onto the battlefield, but let me remind you all that 10 years ago, Phoenix Wright was a playable character in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, battling against the likes of Mega Man, Chris Redfield, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Galactus. And if previous fighting game experience isn't enough to at least humor the idea of Mr. Wright bringing down the law on his opponents in battle, let me just say 3 words to you. We Fit Trainer. The Ace Attorney series is incredibly quirky, so though Phoenix Wright may just be a regular guy defending people in court, a moveset can absolutely be made for him, just like every other fighter in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So please hear me out as we go over why Phoenix is the right choice for the final DLC character to close out the Fighter's Pass, and how he'd work in Smash. The important thing to remember about the Ace Attorney series is that it's always broken down into 2 phases of gameplay: investigations and trials. In Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, this was translated by making Phoenix into a stance fighter. He collected evidence in the investigation phase, then could enter trial phase, and with 3 pieces of evidence, he could enter turnabout mode, making him incredibly powerful. Now, that was for an arcade-style fighting game, which we're not really looking to translate into Smash. 1-to-1 at least. Here in Smash Ultimate, Mr. Wright would still be a stance fighter, but only swap between the investigation phase and trial phase, each with their own set of special moves. During the investigation phase, Phoenix is lighter and faster, since he's normally traveling all around when investigating before trial, while he's slower and heavier during the trial phase since he normally stays in one place. Think of these phases almost like a transformation fighter, like Pyra and Mithra for example, but the character themselves don't change, only their properties and special moves do. Now that we've talked about his special properties, let's present his moveset. All of Phoenix Wright's standard moves remain the same regardless of which phase he's currently in. His neutral attack is to smack some papers in front of him as he talks. This would only hit 3 or 4 times, and not be a continuous jab. His side and up tilts send a rush of papers in an arc ahead of him. To the left and right, it's similar to a move he uses in Marvel vs. Capcom. Upwards, it's best comparable to Peach's up tilt, creating a rainbow arc above. Only, in this case, it's with papers. The down tilt, on the other hand, doesn't involve papers at all. Phoenix will kneel down and pick up an object off the ground as he investigates, and this would best compare to Villager's down tilt. His side smash is the iconic
Objection!
Phoenix points and the word bubble extends out for more reach and damage. The word bubble is the sweet spot, so using this at close range won't be as effective. Similar to characters like Marth, where the tip of the blade deals the most damage. The range of this move is about equal to common sword users, so like Link, or again like Marth, with their side smash. Next up is the down smash, which has Phoenix slam his hands on a desk that appears in front of him. This sends a shockwave in both directions, to either side along the ground, dealing some damage. It's best comparable to Yoshi's down special, or Bowser's down aerial when it hits the ground. For the up smash, Phoenix throws a pile of papers into the air. Unlike the up tilt, which is in more of an arc, this mess of papers flies straight upwards, giving more vertical range than horizontal. The aerial attacks are probably the trickiest to pinpoint. These would more than likely involve spins, kicks, and punches, like many of the other fighters, and probably be his only moves to do so. Grabs and throws are performed by Maya instead of Phoenix. She appears before him, grabbing the opponent and handling all of the throws, with Phoenix stepping back a bit. Now that we've talked about most of the standard set of moves, let's move on to where things get interesting, the special moves. Starting off with how Phoenix begins in battle, in the investigation phase. His standard special is the Maya counter. Maya appears next to Phoenix and throws her arms out in front of her, making a small force field. This counters an enemy attack and knocks them back, functioning similarly to the Toad, Peach, and Daisy both use. This is not a reflector though. Phoenix Wright's side special is identifying and breaking Psyche locks. This is a two-part move. To start, Phoenix points with a "Hold it!" appearing ahead of him. This adds a Psyche lock to the opponent if they're hit. It deals some damage and minimal knockback. The Psyche lock will remain on them for 3 to 5 seconds like a target, comparable to Sephiroth's Shadow Flare. If no follow-up occurs, it simply disappears. If a Psyche lock has been placed on an opponent, using the side special again will trigger the second part of this move. Phoenix will point with a "Take that!" appearing ahead of him. This will break the Psyche lock and hurt the opponent. This deals more damage and knockback than just placing a Psyche lock. This move also functions as a shield breaker. While not a 100% guarantee of a shield break, it takes out a good 95% of the shield, like Marth's shield breaker or Bowser's down special. Neither part of this move has a ton of reach though. It's about equal to that of the side smash, and again, that's best comparable to an average sword user like Marth or Link. His up special is Rising Stepladder. Phoenix quickly climbs or jumps up a stepladder and leaps off the top. It doesn't do any damage, so it's only really useful for recovery. It's also a fun reference to a recurring argument in the Ace Attorney games. Finally, at least for the investigation phase, his down special is Phase Change. Phoenix changes from the investigation phase to the trial phase, striking a confident pose with an iconic sound effect from the game playing. Moving on to the trial phase of special moves, his standard special is the Defense's Reflect. Phoenix places a hand over his attorney badge and a small yellow force field appears in front of him. Any projectile that touches it will be reflected, like Fox's reflector. This is not a counter, and it only works in front of him. Getting hit by a projectile from behind will still hurt him. Mr. Wright's side special is Presenting Evidence. Phoenix throws a projectile like an item, which can be picked up or caught by opponents and thrown back. These different items are randomly determined, and can have different properties, like Peach's turnips for example. Case files can have low knockback and low damage. These look like case files or autopsy reports from Ace Attorney, and would be more common. Murder weapons, on the other hand, can have medium knockback and higher damage. These can be a knife, gun, or other object being thrown. These would be more rare, like a stronger turnip from Peach. His up special is Desk Slam Leap. The table for the defense appears in front of Phoenix, and he slams his hands down on it to jump into the air. This has far less reach than Rising Stepladder, and only gives, at most, another full jump height. In terms of a recovery, it's not very good, but it is better than nothing. Perhaps best comparable to Bayonetta's recovery. Anyway, if done in the air, the desk will fall, and can deal damage to other opponents, like Sonic Spring for example. Finally, just like in the investigation phase, his down special is Phase Change. Phoenix changes from the trial phase back to the investigation phase. He strikes an embarrassed pose with a different sound effect from Ace Attorney playing. Phoenix's final smash is called Turnabout Pursuit, or perhaps Pursuit Cornered, like the iconic song? Well, anyway, it hits one singular target in a cinematic attack. The opponent is placed on the witness stand in court. Phoenix slams the desk, then looks to his left and right to be joined by his friends Apollo Justice, Athena Sykes, Maya Fey, and Miles Edgeworth. After a cinematic camera spins around them, they all point for a hearty, unified OBJECTION! Even if only Phoenix's voice clip plays. The focus changes to the opponent, on the witness stand in a hurt pose. A glass-shattering effect acts as a transition back to battle, launching the opponent away with a powerful strike. It basically plays out like a climactic end to a trial in Ace Attorney. Now that we've talked about his moveset at length, let's take a look at what else Phoenix Wright has to offer, starting with costumes. His default costume is the iconic classic Phoenix Wright outfit from the original trilogy. This gets a few recolors, namely Miles Edgeworth colors, Apollo Justice colors, Athena Sykes colors, and Prosecutor Godot colors. His sixth costume is the modern Phoenix Wright outfit from the 3DS era titles. So what about the last two?
Hold it!
The 7th and 8th costumes aren't actually Phoenix Wright, but his ancestor Ryunosuke Naruhodo, the protagonist of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, in an Olimar and Alf kind of situation. Slot 7 is Naruhodo in his traditional Black Skull uniform, while Slot 8 is his Western-style outfit from the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. Of course, some changes to the moveset would take place when playing as Naruhodo. The grabs and throws, as well as the investigation phase standard special, would be performed by his judicial assistant, Susato Mikotoba, instead of Maya Fey. Come on, the counter needs to be the Susato takedown. Instead of placing a force field in front of her, Susato would take a battle-ready stance. The trial phase standard special would also animate a bit differently, where Naruhodo places his left hand on the attorney armband on his right arm, but a small yellow force field would still appear in front of him. While a couple animations would look a bit different, Naruhodo would functionally be identical to Phoenix, since he's only an alternate slot. The hitboxes and more would be exactly the same. The final smash would mark another cosmetic change for Naruhodo, bringing in the cast of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles instead of Phoenix Wright's friends. This would bring in Susato Mikotoba, Herlock Sholmes, Iris Wilson, and Barrack Van Zieks. Smash Ultimate DLC always comes with more than just a character. A big part is also the stage. For Phoenix Wright, this stage is Turnabout Courtroom, or as it's commonly known in Ace Attorney, the District Court. This is the main courtroom of the Ace Attorney series. Its design would more closely resemble its appearance in the 3D titles, and there's two ways this could work as a stage in Smash. The first idea is to have the desks and benches get in the way and be small platforms, with blast zones only above the gallery in the upper left and right, as well as straight up. Nothing in this courtroom would be destructible. Defense attorneys and prosecutors are in their respective stands, objecting and throwing evidence at each other, which would be hazards for players. An alternative idea would be fighting in front of the courtroom, and most of the court elements are happening in the background, on a relatively flat stage otherwise, similar to Northern Cave. This would prevent the courtroom from feeling like too small of a stage. Either version will have cameos. A judge always sitting in the top seat, while the others would be either in the background, simply watching the fight and cheering, similar to the Phantom Thieves on Mementos, or the other fighters in King of Fighters Stadium, or they'd be participating in court at their respective stands. Apollo, Athena, and Edgeworth could all make appearances, perhaps even Pearl Fey and Detective Gumshoe. As a variation, the cast could instead sometimes be from the Great Ace Attorney, bringing in Herlock Sholmes, Iris Wilson, Barrack Van Zieks, Gina Lestrade, and Inspector Gregson. These appearances would vary when the stage is loaded, and wouldn't conflict with Wright or Naruhodo. Each of the DLC characters added to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate have been fun and interesting in their own way, and Phoenix Wright would be no different. As we celebrate its 20th anniversary this year, hopefully I've presented a good case for why Phoenix Wright would be a fantastic addition to the roster, and make a strong end to the second Fighters Pass. As a major Ace Attorney fan, I would absolutely love to see this happen, and I hope you would too. If you have any ideas for how Phoenix Wright might work in Smash, make sure to share them down below. With that, thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for plenty more on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and other things gaming as well. Hopefully we learn the final Smash character soon in a Nintendo Direct. Check out the videos on the right for more content you might be interested in. Until next time, farewell.